Star Wars Episode 7. Hey guys, what the fuck is up, you guys? My name is eManDance642, and welcome to the beginning of the end. This sequel trilogy. I will be reviewing the spin-off movies to take a break from the sequels. Plus, I haven't seen either of them in a long-ass time, so I might as well. Okay. The Force Awakens. This movie was a big-ass deal when it came out. Even for me, because when this movie was first revealed, I wasn't even a Star Wars fan, and yet I was excited as hell. I decided to watch the first 6 movies because of this movie. And when I saw it, I really liked it. I really liked this movie back in 2015. Oh, it was a simpler time back then, at the age of 12. The sequel trilogy was the first movie series that I grew up watching. I saw episode 7, 8, and 9 in theaters. I was around during these movies not knowing what was going to happen next. It was definitely a surreal experience experiencing these movies as they were coming out. As I rewatched this movie for the dozenth time, it made me feel sad. Why? First off, like I said, I really liked this movie when it came out, but watching it with a much more mature and critical eye, the movie has a ton of flaws. I mean, it makes me feel reminiscent of the youth that is now lost and how life will never be the same as it is when I was 12 or so. But more in line with the review, it makes me sad that this movie had a lot of potential to be a better movie, but more so the trilogy had potential. Just watching this movie when it came out made me really, really excited for what's next to come. And then I remember what's next to come. The Force Awakens is a rather diverse Star Wars film, I think. Well, this movie was praised on launch. It was hailed as the greatest Star Wars movie since the original trilogy, but after a year or so, people hated the movie. For whatever reason, they hated it. And where do I stand in the movie? I like it. I'm not a huge fan of it, but by no means is it a bad movie. Is it the best movie since the original trilogy? Objectively, yes, it is. From a filmmaking and storytelling standpoint, it definitely is. But to my personal beliefs, it's definitely better than episode 1 and 2, but I gotta say I like Revenge of the Sith more. Awakens is objectively a better film, but I enjoy Revenge more. The best way to describe this movie is a fun action film. Watching the prequels, you have to think a lot, and if you don't know, Star Wars fans don't like thinking. But they still hate this movie. Okay, like I said, this movie is a good, simple action film, but the problems start to arise when you think about the plot that is actually happening. It starts to have many holes. A New Hope was, at its core, a fun action film, but the story was still really good and it didn't have holes. This movie does. I need to bring up the biggest problem people have with this movie, and that is the similarities between it and A New Hope. You see, The Force Awakens was a reboot of sorts for Star Wars. 10 years after the last movie, the prequels were less than stellar, so this movie was made as a reaction to them. So it makes sense to make this a simpler movie that loosely follows A New Hope, which if you saw in that review, I gave a 10, which is, like really good. Wait, did I say loosely followed? Well, the problem is, The Force Awakens, much more than loosely follows A New Hope. I personally don't find the fact that a lot of the stories borrowed from that movie that big of a deal. The problem is that it's just worse. A lot worse. Now, I will say that this movie is good at what it does. For the most part, it is good. It's a simple action film that conveys the idea of good versus evil. After you watch it once, there's not much of a point in going back to watch it again. The first time, it's really exciting, but every time after watching it, it gets worse and worse. For most movies, there's a perk in rewatching it because there's always something you missed, and it's really cool to experience it again and again. Just like A New Hope. I've seen that movie a million times. Episode 4 and 5 are my most watched movies of all time, and they still hold up so well. when I watched them for the reviews last year, I was just as excited as when I watched them for the first time. But The Force Awakens, I wasn't. I wasn't excited more. I'd even say it was boring at times. This is not a boring movie by far, but rewatching it felt boring. It feels so much worse. I realize how many problems are in this movie. Once you watch this movie, you've watched everything. There is not much to miss here. It's a pretty easy movie to digest. This movie has a lot more in common with modern Marvel movies than it does Star Wars movies. Most Marvel movies are simple and easy to comprehend, but they fall flat after a few viewings. That's the same reason I don't care for most of the Marvel movies. Also, another thing about this movie that relates to Marvel is it's really not funny. And it tries so hard to be. It's Marvel movie humor and I hate it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's distracting and cringy. Something good about the movie before we actually talk about what happens. This movie looks great. The CGI and effects look great. I don't know what they'll look like later in time, but it's been 5 years and it still looks great. A hell of a lot better than the prequels. The Force Awakens is the 7th movie in the Star Wars saga, taking place 30 years after Return of the Jedi. After the Empire fell, the First Order arose, and there was a resistance trying to stop them. Sounds familiar, right? This movie starts with Poe Dameron, who is on Jakku and finds the map to Luke Skywalker, who is gone missing. Okay, I do not like how Luke is portrayed in this movie. So, after the original trilogy, Luke trained a new batch of Jedi. So far, so good. But Han and Leia's son, Ben Solo, who was one of those Jedi, betrayed Luke and destroyed everything. He joins the First Order and becomes Kylo Ren. After that, what does Luke decide to do? Straight up leave. Not face the situation, but vanish. Luke Skywalker, the legendary Jedi who defeated Darth Vader and turned to good in his final moments, just bails. This is not my Luke. Luke would never do this. I hate the depiction of Luke and the older characters in general in this trilogy. We'll get to Han when he comes up, but what the fuck. After all the character development that Luke went through in the original trilogy, plus another 30 years, he would never do this. I guess it doesn't really matter yet, since we don't actually see Luke yet, so I'll talk more about that in the next review. Kylo Ren is the sequel's Darth Vader. Like Darth Vader in the first movie, they aren't shown a whole lot. We see a lot more of Kylo in this movie though. Kylo is probably my favorite character in the trilogy. He was the only character handled well in the entire trilogy and has a good cohesive arc, for the most part. He is the only character that feels planned out. He is menacing and intimidating, but he also seems immature and at times weaker than Darth Vader. Kylo wants to live up to Darth Vader and finish what he started, but Kylo doesn't understand who Vader truly was and who Anakin truly was. Vader was 41 in A New Hope and Kylo is 29 in this movie, which isn't a huge difference, but it's enough of one. We see Vader as this huge force to be reckoned with, and same with Kylo, but we see Kylo at weaker moments with his fits of rage. I like this duality in him. I wonder where he will go in the next films. So the First Order comes, and I like how brutal this scene is. Like, the Stormtroopers were never a real threat before, and they aren't really in this movie either, but this is a really good introduction to the First Order. Or it would be if the First Order is better. Anyway, Poe gets the map and gives it to his droid BB-8 and sends him off. I fucking hate BB-8. He was only introduced to sell toys. Obviously they were going to market this movie to sell toys, but really? BB-8 is stupid and dumb and pointless. R2-D2 and C-3PO were iconic and great characters and were still droids, but BB-8 is fucking stupid. So Kylo Ren joins the party and takes the old man that had the map hostage. After interrogating him for a minute and not getting answers, Kylo kills him. What? Why? When he kidnaps both Poe and Rey later, he takes them into his torture chamber and probes their mind, but this guy he just kills. I guess this guy matters less because he's not the main character. Also, it doesn't really matter because Poe gets caught like an idiot anyway. And like I said, Kylo takes him back to his torture chamber. Poe is an okay character. He doesn't really have much personality like most of the characters in this trilogy. When I heard Poe's name last year when talking about the new movie, I completely forgot who he was. That has never happened to me where I've completely forgotten a main character like that. But I drew a blank on who Poe was. His only personality trait is he's a good pilot. So Kylo takes him back and does his force torture on Poe. There were a lot of new force abilities that were added to the sequels. Most of them are terrible. This one actually makes sense and is a good addition. So Poe breaks and he tells Kylo about BB-8 and is sent to a prison. So, FN-2187, aka Finn, is a stormtrooper who decided to turn against the First Order and escape. I actually really like this idea a lot. Finn is a mostly good character, but the problem I have with him is it didn't go far enough. Aside from him knowing a few things from the inside of the First Order, him being an ex-stormtrooper is completely pointless. Like, imagine if we got this character who is against war and fighting because he's seen it at its worst. That would be great. Also, his existence brings up a few issues, like, has this happened before? No way Finn is the first stormtrooper to rebel against the First Order. There's got to be others from the Empire. There probably is a story in the comics about that, but I haven't read them all, so I don't know. My point is, there has to be some sort of precautions to prevent something like this from happening. But as far as we know, Finn is the only stormtrooper to rebel, and he just so happens to break out the greatest pilot in the Resistance. For future reference, this movie is really coincidental. So much coincidental shit happens in this movie, it's insane. So Finn and Poe escape and head to Tatooine. I mean Jakku. They crash land on Jakku and Poe is thought to be dead. Finn finds civilization and just so happens to find the same spot where BB-8 was. And BB-8 just so happens to find Rey. So Rey is this trilogy's Luke. Well, kinda. Rey is a similar character to Luke, or so we think. Like Luke, she's trapped on this desert planet, and where the two characters differ, Luke wants to break free. Move away, go somewhere, do something. And Rey wants to stay on Jakku. Just stay there. She was abandoned by her family and left on Jakku. So she has spent her entire, 19-year-old life on Jakku, waiting for them to return. This is a good concept for a character. I hope it doesn't go completely nowhere. Also, personality-wise, Luke and Rey are very different. Luke was bratty and impatient. He grew over the trilogy to become more patient, and in the end became a very, very strong character. Rey is, patient, and is perfect. I can't really say much wrong with Rey, or really much at all, because there's not much to her. She's just really good at everything. Her only flaws are, no parents. That's really it. Now, in this movie, she's not that bad, so I'm sticking to what happens in this movie, purely. I do agree with the Mary Sue argument about Rey. It's not that bad in this movie, but it's still prevalent. Luke and Anakin had pretty much the same problem in their movies, so I won't complain about Rey being too overpowered, even though she really is. I just have the problem with her not having any faults, or much of a personality at all. Luke was impatient and a brat. Anakin didn't think before he acted and was easily manipulated. Rey has no parents. Yeah, that's not a fault. She's just perfect. Now, the problem with Rey is that she was written to appease fans because she's a woman. She was written as a woman before she was written as a character. I'm not against a female being the main character of a Star Wars movie. I'm all for it, but I'm rather have an engaging main character who drives the story along as well as grows with the story. It doesn't matter whether they're male or female. Now, Star Wars doesn't have that many female characters, at least in the movies. And yeah, add some more, but Rey is not a good female role model. Leia was a great character and role model. She had faults as well as strengths. And the fucking Clone Wars. I know everyone says it, but Ahsoka Tano is an amazing character who grew from a spoiled brat who gets everything she wants to one of the most compelling characters in the series. To the point where Clone Wars is honestly more about Ahsoka than it is about Anakin. But Rey wasn't written to be a good character. She was written so Star Wars could look progressive with the times. The Force is female, am I right? Anyway, Rey and BB-8 meet with Finn. Finn tells her that he's with the Resistance. The First Order finds them, and they just so happen to find the fucking Millennium Falcon. What the fuck? How do they just find the fucking Millennium Falcon just chilling? Well, they just take it. And Rey, the god she is, manages to fly the ship and do multiple very tricky maneuvers even though she's never flown a ship before. They escape, and guess who finds them? It's fucking Han Solo! How? How the fuck did Han Solo find them? Coincidence. Okay. Han Solo is okay in the movie. I don't like how all of his character development in the original trilogy was just erased, and he was back to his old ways again. It's disappointing to see that. He's a fucking old man now. No way should he still be doing that shit. I do like the idea of him being a divorced old man wandering the galaxy with Chewbacca. That really fits with Han's character. We are introduced to the sequel as Palpatine at first, Supreme Leader Snoke. Like Palpatine in Empire, Snoke is really cool, but we don't know who or what he is. He is this huge malformed hologram. I can't wait to see what they do with him in the next films. So they travel to Green Planet and meet with Discount Yoda. They found out, and the First Order, along with the Resistance, comes to Green Planet. Rey and Finn run away, but Rey is caught by Kylo and Finn goes back to save her. We meet old Leia, and I do like this scene where Han and Leia reconnect. It's really sad. You could see they truly love each other, but they can't be together. Now a spoiler. Fucking territory. So tired. Yeah. So as it turns out, Poe is alive and well. Who the fuck's Poe? And Finn and Poe are really chummy, even though they barely know each other. So Rey is taken on Starkiller Base, and Kylo mind probes her. But she is too powerful and he can't. She manages to break out. Meanwhile, Han, Finn, and Chewie board the base and meet up with Rey. So Han and Kylo have a confrontation, and you really feel the tension between the characters. Han truly cares about his son, and even Ben cares about his father. But then, Ben kills his father. This is a little iffy for me. I don't know if this is the best decision for Han. Han does feel underwhelming in this movie to me, and I don't really like his death. Then we get this fight scene between, at first, Kylo and Finn, then Kylo and Rey. So now we know that Finn is truly a good guy, thus completing his arc. I wonder what is in store for him in the next films. I know everyone complains about Rey defeating Kylo and being too powerful. I complained about her being too powerful before, but here it's okay, because Kylo was wounded shortly before, and Rey actually knows how to use a melee weapon because she was shown to use one before. Also, she doesn't completely demolish Kylo, she just kind of overpowers him. I have two problems with this fight. One, it's not that great. It's alright, but not amazing. I really like the setting of the snowy planet contrasting with the blue and red lightsabers. It looks so cool. But the fight itself was kind of underwhelming. I don't really like how Rey is at first getting her ass kicked and then is cornered, and then she says the Force. It pauses for a second. Then she gets fucking energized and is wailing on Kylo. It feels so forced. Also, another problem with these movies as a whole is the lightsabers. They are extremely nerfed. Before, the characters got body parts cut off left and right, but in these movies, the lightsabers do light scratches and that's it. Obviously, it's a Disney movie, so I can't expect that to all to happen, but I still don't like it. So, Starkiller Base is blown up, everyone has a crying session, and they still have the map to Luke. But oh wait, it's only a piece of it. But oh wait, R2 fucking D2 just decides to randomly wake up and reveal that he has the rest of the map to Luke. So out of everyone, Rey, not Luke's sister Leia, but Rey, goes to find Luke. I do really like the scene where Rey finds Luke and hands him the lightsaber. It's shot really well, and it's a great cliffhanger for the next movie. I still really don't like the idea of it, but for the context of the movie, it's good. I can't wait to see how they handle it in the next movie. This movie was a good reintroduction to the series, but had quite a few problems when delving underneath. For the most part, I liked most of the characters aside from a few. I guess it's overall a good, simple action-adventure film. I just personally don't like it all that much. I'm going to give Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens, A 6 out of 10. A little too much. That hurts. On its own, this movie is good. And I did review it without context from the other 2 sequels, to be fair. You will definitely see my opinions on those movies. This has been Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens.